we're watching the game, and basketball is changing. I mean, obviously, some of these players are becoming prima donnas. Kyrie Irving has been a prima donna in the league for the last couple of years. After what Kyrie Irving said and what he stands for, you can't really attack him. You can't really say anything bad about what he is doing for himself and his family, and being transparent to be a front runner and a leader of the league. When you look at the league now with Ben Simmons, obviously Kyrie Irving, and some of these players that we're seeing make a lot of money and, not causing trouble, but being interesting Samaritans to the league, what are your thoughts to where the league is going and how Adam Silver could help, kind of like take back or take control of this league, because it has become a players' league?
It has. There's a few different ways to look at this. I mean, the Kyrie situation and the Ben Simmons situation are very, very different in terms of what they're doing and what they want. The Kyrie situation is pretty unprecedented. If we're looking at what's going on with Ben Simmons, though, a lot of fans, obviously in Philadelphia, are not thrilled with what's going on there. There's a lot of fans around the league who aren't too happy with Rich Paul or Clutch Sports, the way this is playing out. And the way Ben Simmons is behaving, the way he's acting in this situation it's not ideal for the NBA. It's not what you want to see happen. But sometimes things go poorly, and he's got 4 years left under contract, which I think that's the part that really gets people, right? You can understand if a guy has 1 year left on his contract and the team goes to him and says, hey, are you going to stick around? Are you going to re-sign with us or no? And if they say no, then okay, you're put in a situation where you kind of have to trade them to get something for them. But this is pretty unprecedented to have 4 years left under contract and to be doing what Ben Simmons is. Now, there's a mental health aspect that's been rolled into this, and I don't want to criticize him for that. Like, there have been people that have questioned the validity of that. The 76ers have wanted more information and everything, which is fair, but we also don't want to walk back all the progress that is made towards making mental health issues a lot more acceptable. But with Ben Simmons in particular, it's also, we have to keep in mind that the NBA did this to themselves. This is what happens, right? When you have long-term contracts and then the owners say, no, we don't want to get stuck paying players for 7 years. We want to cut contracts down and then cut them down. Okay, great. But if you're going to have contracts that are going to be shorter, guess what? Players are going to become free agents more often, which means they're going to have more opportunities to move and go somewhere else.
Right.
And that's only going to create an environment where it's natural for players to say, hey, I'm a free agent this year. You're a free agent this year. Let's go do something together. And maybe we can team up and play just like we played for Team USA together and things like that. So we're in an era of player empowerment, but part of that is because the NBA got rid of these longer term contracts. And so now player movement has become more and more of a normal thing, a normalized thing in the NBA. And that might not necessarily be a bad thing. If you look at the way the NBA offseason is, how much interest there is in all the different moves and things like that, the attention on the league is almost higher when the game is not being played based on everything that's happening in terms of trades and free agency and all of that sort of stuff. So it's a complex issue. I can understand, though, the problem is that fans are really the ones caught in the middle, in particular with this Ben Simmons situation, right? Those are the ones that are really getting hurt by not having the player out there. The 76ers were doing great without him for a while, but those are the ones that are kind of caught in the crossfire here between the organization and the player. It's a tough topic, and I think it's something that will be addressed in the next CBA agreement to some degree, but like I said, the owners, they kind of did this to themselves too with what they wanted. They just didn't expect that this would be the consequence of having more player movement, that you would also get players who now felt more comfortable to say, hey, I'd like to go somewhere else now that we're seeing players move around a bit more often.
So we're based out in Long Island, based out of New York. A lot of Knicks fans here, Errol and I included in that. And your team just signed one of the guys that's been with the Knicks for a while, in Carmelo Anthony, and he gets to play with his buddy and LeBron James now. And at one point, Errol was actually mentioning to me about 2 weeks ago, he was actually at one point the second leading scorer on the team at one point. So what do you think are the expectations for him, both short-term right now with LeBron being out a lot of games right now? What is his role going to be like? And then long-term into the playoffs, what do you think between minutes, maybe his role on the team, what do you think it'll be? And maybe his ceiling as well. What do you think?
Yeah, it's got to be less than what it is right now, because it feels like he's kind of playing on dead legs at the moment. The Lakers have had to rely on him because both Ariza and LeBron James have been out. So they haven't had much size at the wing positions to put in there. It's pretty much just been Carmelo Anthony. He's been tremendous. He's shot the ball extremely well the last few games aside. Again, I think the the fatigue is starting to set in now that they've had to rely on him so much. But moving forward, I think that the ideal role for him and what they envisioned was a scorer coming off the bench, a guy where, hey, he can come out there, he can space the floor for you, he can give you 20-plus minutes a night and be just fine. The defensive end of the floor, if you can get at least average level defense from him, you're happy with that. He hasn't always shown that throughout his career. But just a guy that can come in and score off the bench for you because he's still, even at 37, he can still get buckets, and that's something that a lot of teams can still need. So I think that's it. That's it for him. Moving forward, I don't think they want to rely on him as much as they have recently, but injuries have kind of forced their hand. I think in the future we're going to see less of Carmelo Anthony, but probably more efficiency because he's not going to have to play 30-plus minutes a night.
We've been talking about the Lakers' struggles, whether they're blown out of proportion or not. Right now, they haven't looked great, obviously. As Errol said, LeBron played 3 games. I mean, there's just been moving pieces. There's no camaraderie right now as a unit. We've seen LeBron in his past play GM, where he gets very quick-triggered about, hey, all right, this team can't win this way as it is now. I need this to go and get me this, that. There's a little bit of a feeling of Russell Westbrook's going to be that guy that if someone's going to be pointed that finger at, it's going to be Russ because of his history in OKC and then obviously what he did in Washington. Do you see LeBron kind of pressing front office to be like, listen, I don't know if this is going to work this way. Explore this option. Kyrie Irving hasn't played a game yet, and there's kind of rumors going around that maybe he's trying to get out of Brooklyn to go play with LeBron again and the money matches and everything like that. Is LeBron trying to play GM yet, or is LeBron just kind of easing his way back and there's no red button pushing yet?
I mean, LeBron playing GM is absolutely a thing. I mean, he's even talked about it. Like, he set up a command center, I think it was that he called it, at his house for the offseason where he was hosting players and all kinds of things, right? So LeBron playing that role is nothing new. But as far as whether or not he'll try to get rid of Russell Westbrook, I mean, the Kyrie thing, I don't know if that happens. I mean, there's mandates in LA too, so I don't know. Does that really solve the problem? We'll see how things, play out as far as that move specifically. But if LeBron goes to the Lakers and says, hey, it's not working with Westbrook, figure out something else, they're going to have a really tough time doing it because he's making $45 million, and there's not a lot of teams around the NBA that need a point guard. I've got a lot of fans, too, that have already started to say Westbrook turns the ball over too much. Can the Lakers trade him? What can they do with the cap and all that kind of stuff? There's nothing. There isn't really an obvious answer out there. A team that needs him, that would be interested in him, they are going to be probably stuck with this group, with these 3 for the next 2 seasons, because you've got this season and next season where Westbrook's under contract. And that was kind of what they knew going in, that, hey, this is going to be pretty much a 2-year run with these 3 together. And if things go south, I don't see a lot of options to mix that up and to change things other than moving one of LeBron or Anthony Davis, which I definitely don't see happening.
You look at the league right now, and there's a lot of great players, and we're trying to compare and contrast the past to now. And a lot of people, with Steph Curry and LeBron James and all these great basketball players that are coming out of the NBA right now, and obviously the past, when you have Michael Jordan, you have Shaquille O'Neal, Tim Duncan. When you compare and contrast the players of the times of the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s to today, what do you see in the change of the game has affected the speed of the game with these players?
I mean, the speed of the game has changed. I mean, the 80s were incredibly fast. So the speed of the game has changed over time. It is sped up, and then it's slowed down, and now it's sped up again. But when we're comparing players like that through the different eras, it's difficult because we tend to look at it through the modern lens, right? I mean, how many people have said, oh, well, hey, Magic Johnson or Michael Jordan or Shaq, right? Or whoever it is. Oh, well, but they were good. But how would they deal today with the amount of spacing, with the amount of 3-point shooting? If a guy like that, let's say it's Kobe, let's say it's Jordan, let's say it's whoever, was brought up based on the way the game is playing right now, I think it's a mistake to not assume that they would also develop the skill set necessary in order to thrive in today's game. So we just have to try to take that at face value. It's hard to compare the different eras because, go watch a game from even 2000. right? You go watch a game from 20 years ago, and it almost looks like a different sport. The sets that they're running, the way that everything is run on both offense and defense, the rules of the NBA, they've changed so much that it makes these player comparisons really, really difficult to do. There's a lot of great players in NBA history. There's a lot of guys who have been incredible in their time. And then 20 years later, maybe they don't look quite as good compared to what they've got in that moment. But that's just kind of what makes the question so difficult when you're looking at players from different eras, because you're always looking at them through that modern lens and thinking, oh, what would they look like in today's game? When that's not always really a fair way to address it, because of how different the game is from back then to now.
So sticking with the history, because the Lakers do have a very rich history. I mean,
they
you could probably ask 100 basketball fans this question, and they'd have all different responses. I know Tyler thinks it's Kobe. I think it's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We had Mo Dakhil, who's
he's a big Kobe fan too. So
we had Mo Dakhil, who does the podcast for The Athletic, who's a big Laker fan. He was saying it was Shaq. People could say Magic Johnson, Jerry West, all these guys. Who do you think is the greatest Laker of all time, and why?
It's Kobe. I grew up as a Magic fan. I grew up as a Magic Johnson fan. When Magic came back in '96, I had all the newspapers from Southern California, plastered to my walls in my room. I was so excited. But no, it's definitely Kobe. I mean, 2 decades in Los Angeles, you're not going to top that. What he meant went beyond just what he did on the court as well. The connection that he made with fans is unreal. So it's, to me, the greatest Laker is Kobe.
That's beautiful to hear. I'm glad Common Sense has reappeared on the show.
Maybe you should get his Twitter feed, and you can tell him that privately, because that's what it seems like you want to do. Kissy, blow him a kissy. No, it's just, you got a Kobe picture. You got a Kobe jersey. Kobe's.
People respect greatness around here. That's all that happens.
Stop.
And you kind of leaned into my question a little bit. Obviously, you said you grew up a Magic Johnson fan, and then the love, I guess, for the Lakers has obviously only grown since then, correct?
Yeah, I mean, my earliest memory, and I'm very fortunate that I get to cover this team professionally now, but my earliest memory is of watching the Lakers when I was a kid, sitting on the couch with my dad, listening to Chick Hearn and, all that kind of stuff. The first basketball game, the first sporting event I ever went to was a Lakers game. Charles Barkley got thrown out of the game for throwing an elbow. I definitely grown up on the Lakers, so I'm very fortunate to now get to cover the team that I grew up on.
Well, I will say this. I love that your enthusiasm and that you believe Kobe Bryant's the greatest Laker. I think you're out of your mind, but that's just me, okay? But I honestly, the most dominant player the Lakers ever had was Shaquille O'Neal, the greatest player I think they've ever had, and they've had a lot of great players. I would push to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, he wasn't an all-time Laker because he was a Milwaukee Buck, so people, forget about that, or maybe they don't forget about that. But Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he won in college, he won in the NBA, and he's one of the greatest basketball players and offensive players of all time. So,
by the way, Trey is in our comments section saying Kobe is the greatest Laker of all time by far, and Kobe deserves to be in the GOAT conversation alongside MJ.
Is that Trey Larkins?
Trey Larkins.
Trey, man, you're my guy. I love Trey.
Well, good for Trey, because Trey's out of his mind too. But that's just 2 guys that are out of their mind today.
I'm sure Trevor would agree with that too, that he doesn't get enough GOAT conversation.
He's not the GOAT, and he'll never
I didn't say that.
He's not even close.
I would say Jordan's the GOAT, but if the GOAT is here, Kobe was here.
No, Kobe is not the second greatest basketball player of all time.
I'm going to ask him this. Trevor,
Okay,
you
it's
cover
a
the
joke.
team.
It's a
Kobe
joke.
or LeBron James?
No, stop it, you, Trey.
Oh, man.
What are you drinking?
Between the two, see, the difference is, if we're talking about Kobe or LeBron James, the cultural impact around the Lakers, it's Kobe. If we're just talking about who's the greatest Laker, it's Kobe. In terms of who's had the biggest impact NBA-wide, it's probably LeBron. Right, I mean, if we're being real about it, but
no.
But Kobe, yeah.
But if you had to start a team right here, right now,
go again with this.
You're drafting, right? Kobe's
LeBron
18,
James.
LeBron's 18.
LeBron
you see
James.
what they're going to be. Who are you drafting first out of the two?
LeBron James.
I'm taking LeBron. I think he had more dominant years than Kobe did, but Kobe's peak was really impressive.
LeBron James. He makes everybody around him better. Okay, let's be honest.
I'll let Trevor slide. He gives Kobe a little bit more respect than you do.